r/AskReddit, Urban Explorers of Reddit, what was your I better get the fuck out story? I was exploring an abandoned mineshaft for the second day in a row. This was in a small, old Midwestern town that used to be booming from of the mining industry but has long been abandoned. It was also a 10-minute walk from the nearest road. This time I went with different friends and better flashlights. The door I had gone through the first day was now padlocked shut. That should have been the first red flag, but we found an entrance from the rooftop into one of the main buildings and continued to explore anyway. After exploring about 3 floors of mineshaft below ground, we were back on the main floor exploring the workshop garage, and I was looking through the cracks of light coming through the rusted metal walls when I noticed a bright color that stood out from the rest of the area. It was a man looking back at me through the cracks. I was seeing his blue sweater. I could see 2 sets of eyes looking into the room that we were in. After whispering to my friends that there were people watching us through the wall, we fucking booked it out of there and jumped off the roof and into the woods. The men were in a pickup truck and drove around looking for us, even getting out of the truck to look around. We couldn't see them from where we took cover, but we could hear the truck stop, the doors open, and footsteps breaking leaves and twigs only 20 feet away from us. We hid there for about 15 minutes while the men searched all around for us. It is harder than most people think to try and quiet your breathing after sprinting. Not urban but a mate of mine, his then GF, and I were exploring a cave system we found 3 hours into a hike in a national park, kilometers from the nearest road access, in a coastal region called Wilson's Promontory in southern Victoria, Australia. Now I'm a skinny 6'1", but Ray were both skinnier and shorter, so we got to this one narrow bit that we could all get down by sliding on our butts. The cave was pitch black and wet, though we had our phone torches thankfully. Weird-ass cave bugs kept dropping on us, and eventually we headed back. So they both climbed back up the tunnel, but it turned out that my shoulders were too broad to actually move my arms enough to clamber up. Thankfully my arms were extended, and my friend could reach my hands. He almost dislocated my shoulders, but thankfully with a bit of wriggling, I was pulled out. The alternative was a long, dark, cold stay in a hole that would have become a major rescue operation requiring heavy machinery and possibly the destruction of some pristine wilderness that I'd never have forgiven myself for. Claustrophobia hits you hard when it's intense, and boy was that intense. You went exploring into a dark cave, relying solely on your cell phone lights? In Australia? I was taking a look at some of those massive smokestacks in an abandoned factory, and I heard a radio squelch. That's time to go, right there. I convinced a group of about 5 or so of my friends to go with me into this old house that was in an odd sort of industrial area, like on one of those service roads next to a highway. The only way in was to go through the basement and through a hole in the wall at the top of the stairs. After exploring for a while I thought I'd do a scout mission for fun that involved me just walking around the house to check for cops. Well, what do you know? There were cop cars just pulling into the street with sirens on that were pulling into the restaurant next door. Someone probably reported us. The exit was on the other side of the house from the cops. I quickly called up to the others to climb back out, and we somehow managed. I don't generally believe in intuition, but I do find it odd that I had the urge to do a sweep right when the cops showed up. When me and my friends were young, we lived in a trailer park community in a bad part of Phoenix, but we loved exploring anyway. We found a large old storm drain behind our community, covered in graffiti and weeds, and we decided to explore. Walking in with mini flashlights, we kept seeing spots of blood and more strange graffiti. After about 30-ish minutes we started hearing tapping. We got scared and started to walk back out. When we noticed it seemed to be following us, we ran like our lives depended on it. A few weeks after that, our community manager discovered a body near the entrance of the storm drain. That was the last of our exploring. Found something similar once when I was out exploring. In an old gun range, it was night, so no shooters, completely safe. There was this giant crack in a mountain that led to this weird system of caves and giant pipes It was a pretty straight shot in, not many branching paths, but as we get further in we start seeing more ominous graffiti stuff like closer and red handprints and stuff. Then around a corner there was a little shrine with more graffiti and some dead candles all surrounding the words Shrek 2 truly did find God in those mountains.
Oh, you have found Lucky Doggo. Lucky Doggo will wish you luck in your future if you like the video right now. I was inside an abandoned brewery, looking at the old equipment. I climbed a lot of stairs and found a door with scribbles of graffiti on it, among them the sentences "Don't look down" and "Commit suicide harem." We're about 4 stories off the ground at this point, but my curiosity was killing me. I opened the door. Nothing. No stairs or balcony or fence. The door was on the wall of the building and open into thin air, and you absolutely would have been killed, painfully, had you fallen out of it. I posted photos of the graffiti view down. It was lower to the ground than I remember, but it was still terrifying. Little bit late here, but I once went exploring with my brother on an old abandoned naval base at midnight. We snuck into the officers' quarters and were just exploring when we heard a weird noise. We're both into photography, so I decided to take a flash photo and see if I caught anything weird in the light. The camera went off and we both saw a massive 6 feet long bee's nest on the side of one of the walls. I think our presence has just disturbed them because hundreds of them were already crawling in the outside of the nest. It was the single most scariest thing I've ever seen, and it was gone in a second because of the camera flash. We noped the fuck out of there right as a cop was pulling up to see what we were up to. Lol. Went exploring in an old textile mill in rural Alabama. It was easy enough to hide your car for parking, and you could even pull your car onto the site if you had 4-wheel drive. We went off and one time parked right in the middle of the mill's back lot and decided to climb the ladders to the roof. Once we got to the roof the sun started setting, so we got our headlamps ready, watched the sunset, then decided to head back down from the roof. As we're walking to the ladder my car alarm down below starts going off, and immediately from the rooftop across from us someone flashed a flashlight at us, but they never said a thing. I was way too nervous about my car being stolen to really care about the other person, but they didn't chase us, yell, nothing, they just kept their light on us so that we could never see them and followed us with their light till we got into the car and left. I never went back after that. It's torn down now. There was this massive salt storage facility that had a mountain of salt that a private company owned on a rather derelict property next to the city bay. I'm guessing the company sold salt to the city and other municipalities for road maintenance during the winter. Friends and I, all about 12 at the time, as kids do at that age, thought it would be cool to sneak in and climb to the top of this major salt mountain. This salt mountain was about 200 high, it was massive. We get to the top and celebrated, rewarded with the most gorgeous view of the city skyline and its buildings lit up across the bay as the afternoon had turned to dusk. We're getting ready to come down off the mountain. There were about 5 guard dogs, I believe Dobermans, who were at the bottom of the salt mound staring up at us with a piercing glare. They couldn't get up the mountain because they couldn't get traction on the salt and it probably hurt their paws. We all started freaking out. My friend's little brother began crying. We began yelling for help, but nobody was around. It was late on a cold Sunday afternoon in November. The sky's hue darkened as dusk turned to dark. We were probably up there for 2 hours trying to figure out what to do. We finally got silent, laid flat, and acted like we disappeared. The dogs must have gotten bored or distracted and began wandering away. We kept looking and looking, and when they didn't come back for 20 minutes, we traversed off of the salt mound as fast as we could and made a mad dash for the fence in which we entered, and luckily all got out safely. Our parents were all pissed, ready to call the cops because none of us came home at dark. It was one of the most scariest moments of my childhood. I spent a lot of years super into urban exploration, hoping something would make me nope out. It happened a lot, and it was always the same thing. The cops. Thank you listener for watching another one of our Reddit videos. Please subscribe and turn on notifications to see when we next upload. Goodbye and have a lovely day.